Sarah, Mom Endeavors.
Cool.
Jana with Merlot Mommy.
Oh, okay, great.
Do you drink a glass of Merlot?
I know.
Yeah.
During all your
it's
interviews?
it's not even my favorite wine, but the alliteration was
It was
there.
good.
So
It was good. Go with it.
You guys just
Have at it.
hang?
Yeah, they
Just
can.
We
give
did.
We did.
More than you ever want to know about an octopus.
Yeah.
It was actually really interesting. It was really cool to see just the nuances of just animating Hank, with making him squishy and
Yeah.
soft and.
You'll
All the stuff
definitely.
you just take for granted.
Yeah, you'll definitely
Yeah, all
appreciate
the
it more
things
when
that
you
you
watch
don't
the movie. You'll be
notice.
like, wow, that
It's the
wasn't.
same thing with anything in a movie. Anything that you just take for granted is probably was a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Yesterday you said that after Finding Nemo, you thought that story was done. It took you a while to start wondering about Dory.
Mm-hmm.
Ellen, however, on her show
Yes.
mentioned that she
Wouldn't let
thought
it go.
a sequel, and because like the first time I actually heard her talk about it out loud was when Frozen got a sequel immediately. She's like, "Oh yeah, mine was over 10 years."
Right.
So did considering she had that point of view and it took you that long to get there, why?
Every time she did that, believe me, I got a lot of emails forwarding that clip or whatever. I hear it all about all the time. But I know her pretty well, and I would just take it with a grain of salt and laugh because I was I knew that the movie was in my mind finished, and so nobody was more surprised than me when I couldn't stop. Once I got this notion about Dory and her being lost and having the potential to be lost all over again, and that she hadn't really changed from the growth of that first movie, that I just felt like, oh, that started bugging me. I remember the next thought I had once I realized, oh, I think I've got a story here. I go, I can't tell anybody. I mean, if I tell anybody, this thing will never, the horse will never get back in the barn. And I got to be really careful because it's got to be done right. And I got to make sure there's a there. And so I think 11, I got really serious about it. But I waited until about 2012 the summer of 2012 to call her. Because I wanted to make sure that, first I got to say this out loud to everybody I'm working with, and if I even say it out loud indoors at Disney, it's going to happen. So I can't say finding anything. And so I waited till I kind of had a good enough of a notion, and said it was okay. We got a script writer, we started working on a treatment, and we were like, all right, I think it's good enough. So then I called her and I said, all right, I'm crying uncle. We're going to do Finding Dory. And she goes, I didn't really mean it. But then I knew she was being sarcastic. She was over the moon.
Yeah.
And the very next call was Albert. And it all happened within the same 10 minutes. And she was so in. It was the quickest phone call I've ever had with her was taking the role of Dory. I basically wrote with her in mind because I couldn't figure out Dory. I didn't even, it wasn't even a female character at the time. And I just needed this character to have short-term memory loss. I didn't know how to do it. And she had an original show in the 90s called The Ellen Show that was a sitcom. And it was on in the room while I was trying to deal with writer's block, and suddenly I heard her change the sentence 5 times in one sentence, and I went, that's it, that's how you do it. And then I said, why can't it be a female? Why can't it just be a platonic relationship? And I loved breaking that trope. And then I got out of writer's block, and I couldn't stop writing without her in my head. But I knew, there's no guarantee I can get her, and I'm really painting myself in a corner if I do that, but it ended up working. So then I sent her the script, I called her out of the blue, and I said, Ellen, I wrote this part for you, and if you don't take it, I'm completely screwed. Completely screwed. And she didn't know me, and she was like, well, then I better take it. It was that short of a phone call, and I've been so thankful to her ever since, and probably the second shortest phone call was calling Finding Dory.
Can you tell us if there will be any other characters from Finding Nemo that will make their way into this movie?
We tried really hard to put them all in.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Marlon and Nemo are in it, but I think
And they're in it all the way through.
Yes, because I feel like I've gotten that question a few times. I'm like, oh, I realized the clips we showed you maybe implied that they weren't in it kind of after a point, and they're in it all the way through. They're they get separated from her and are like 3 steps behind her kind of throughout the whole film. So, and we tried, we wanted to make sure that, we had at least explored putting in a lot of these characters just because we love them too. And it's like, and these are characters that, over 4 or 5 years, they become your friends. And so you're like, I want to see those guys again. So you kind of invite them to the party. And then after a while, you're like, I think we have to disinvite them to the party if it's not working for the movie. So we tried a lot.
It was like auditioning them.
I think, yeah, exactly. I think in some are definitely there and are there for all the right reasons, and then others, unfortunately, we were like, no, it's just, unfortunately, it starts to feel like we're trying to put everybody in the movie instead of it being like a natural.
I feel pretty confident that all the characters that stayed found exactly where they should be and how they should be placed.
Right.
And the ones that didn't make it, it was meant to be.
Right.
So.
Are there any, like the little jokes or little one-liners from Finding Nemo that made it in, like, you made me ink, or fish are friends, not food?
You know, the fun thing is that we found that when you literally repeated stuff, it felt like we were being safe. So but we derivate off of a couple of things.
Okay,
So,
cool.
which I think ends up being the best of everything, because you kind of remember that gag, but you're not literally doing that same gag.
Right.
So there's a couple times. It's really tough because you don't want to make people be pulled out of the movie. Like you know, you don't want to do a wink. One of the reasons you love the first movie is that you just got caught up in it and you forgot where you were, and then the movie was over and you hopefully shed a tear and you laughed and you really believed that you were in the ocean with these characters. And I don't want you to think that you're in the next movie to Finding Nemo when you're watching it. I want you to believe you're just as back in the ocean with these people. So anything that pulled you out, I didn't do.
Can you also, I'm gonna just go on. Can you talk about casting the newer characters with Ty and Ed and?
You can tell we watch a lot of Modern Family.
Yeah. But I think we were laughing that, like, you know, usually our casting process is a bit painful because you have to kind of have ideas about, have people you're interested in, and then you kind of have to go search, the editors kind of go search through shows that they've been on or movies they've been in, and you have to kind of pull a clip that seems like it may be interesting, and then you have to kind of fake a conversation between that person and, like, Ellen, and then you have to listen to it. And we were like, Ellen and Ty Burrell. And play interview. And then we could just sit there. I mean, she has interviewed everybody. So it was like, because she made it so easy, we were just like, I'm sure she's interviewed, you know, Diane Keaton. And you could just sit there and kind of close your eyes, because you kind of don't want to get distracted by that, but you want to just listen to the voices together and see how they interact. And so in some ways it made our casting process so easy, because she has interviewed almost everybody in our cast at least once before.
Even before I knew the story, I was like, I would love if Dory's parents were Diane Keaton and Eugene Levy. That would be my dream. And it's really nice to come off of a popular movie because they said yes right away. And it was just,
Ellen's
they were all I ever thought of as the parents.
And Diane's never done a voice before, which I was shocked about.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Like, she was like, I don't really know how this works, and
She was a little
you know,
nervous.
she
I'm
was
like, "You're
nervous, and we were
nervous.
like,
I'm
"You're
nervous talking
Diane
to you."
Keaton." But she had never done a voice before,
And
so
she came to every recording session dressed like she was going to be on the cover of Vogue.
swear to God. Every time I'm like,
Her suit, bowler hat.
how does she pull that off? Like, she's got the thick belt, combat
just so
boots, and the
cool.
hat, and the nails, and I was like,
Yeah, you always hear about them coming in like pajamas.
Yeah.
They don't have to dress up.
Most of them do, but
not Diane
She had
Keaton
like a
every
Mary Poppins
time.
bag.
She was.
That's
She
right.
just.
I
I
think
think
she
she
just
just
goes through
dressed.
life
I
like
think she.
that.
Yes, that's how she
Crazy.
dresses. I want her closet.
Did you have to do any medical research when it comes to the short-term memory loss?
No, to be honest, there's nothing. It's so made up for us. I mean, it was honestly came from a biological fact that I learned about goldfish, that they have a memory of 5 seconds, and I thought that was so hilarious. And I thought, well, what would we come up with a character like that? And then I thought it was too good, and I should give it to maybe the character that has to go with Farland through the journey, and how to figure that out. And it slowly evolved, because to just forget every 5 seconds would just get so annoying so fast. And slowly it turned into this, almost like just feeling it out. It was like, oh, let her have emotional memory. Let her not forget any of that stuff. Just have her not remember details. And of course, it's kind of dramatic memory. Like, we pick the perfect times for when she doesn't remember something, so that it makes things worse, you know. And so it's kind of dramatically built. So. But it's okay, because it's specific to a fish. She's not trying to represent anybody specifically in the real world. She's just that's specific to her. But the nice thing about that is that that's the whole thing we're trying to do with this movie, and say is that, like, whatever your weird specific quirk is, which is going to be unique to you and nobody else, is not necessarily a weakness. It's probably a strength, and that's what we're trying to do with her, is
How you
to
look
teach
at it.
her how to look at herself differently and see it as a superpower, not as something to be ashamed of or to be always
Apologizing,
for.
yeah.
You know?
So, and I think that's, I mean, again, like we did a little bit of research, but I think there is truth to the fact, and if you talk to Alzheimer's, people who are suffering from Alzheimer's or something, there's truth to the fact that often, not always, but often they do remember people that they love. And they don't remember their names, they don't remember always like how old they are or what the connection is to that person, but they remember the emotion. They remember that I know you and I love you, and I don't really know as a sister, as a husband, you know what I mean? Like it's, so there's truth to that. And I think we kind of, and we felt better about it as we kind of made those rules for ourselves, to kind of go, it is true that when something happens to you that has an emotional impact, you tend to remember that day pretty clearly, versus last Tuesday, because nothing special really happened. You're like, I don't know, where was I last Tuesday? You know, I mean, so there is something universal to the fact that our memories, and we are built to remember things that matter, and forget things that don't. I mean, that, Inside Out had the short-term memory dump, or like, and that's a real thing.
Yeah.
I mean, like where your
they
brain
have to be more
just
accurate because they're literally in the human brain.
But they did a lot of research, and they were like, no, it's a real thing. I mean, your brain dumps information that it doesn't feel connected to or feel as important regularly. So I think it was just about trying to navigate some of those truths.
We did do some more therapeutic research because I felt she kind of had a parallel story to somebody that might be adopted, because she's with this newfound family that basically is all she can remember and knows, but she has birth parents that she doesn't know, and she's trying to
find out what
trace
happened.
them back. And so we talked to people that dealt a lot with adoption.
Was it challenging to turn her into a main character instead of being
It was the number one
sidekick?
bane of our existence. It was the biggest problem, and followed us for most of the making of the film. We had made her so good at a supporting role. I don't think you can make a better supporting character. And suddenly we're asking her to be the main character, and I thought, oh, that's fine. But the worst thing you can do is have a main character with short-term memory loss. And it may be getting a little heady in the writer side of me, but what I discovered about 2 years in, later than I wanted to, was that one of the reasons that you follow a main character is because you can see that they're growing and that they're changing and that they're hitting things and overcoming them. And the way that you know that is because of self-reflection. They can actually stop and say, I felt sad when I used to do this, but now that I've been through this, I don't feel sad about it anymore. She couldn't do that because she can't remember and she can't self-reflect. So we had no way of tracking that she was changing. And we didn't even realize that was what was going on. So we're like, why is she not interesting? Why is she boring? Why is she starting to get annoying? And that was it. And then the tough part became, okay, now we've identified the diagnosed problem.
Yeah.
How do we solve it? And it was a lot of things. One is attach her to Hank. Hank has memory. Hank can tell her what she's been doing. Have her find people that knew her, that can give her information. Have her remember things as she gets closer to home. And it's like sense memory. It's like, I haven't been in my old elementary school since I was a little kid, and now that I'm here, suddenly I have memory. And lots of things. But we couldn't solve the problem until we identified it. And through the whole thing, I kept kind of swearing and saying, who the heck thought of this character? I
hate that person. I'm like, dude, it was you.
But she was built to do something else.
There were so many great takeaways in Nemo, and obviously in the clips that we saw, so many great takeaways in this film as well. What was the biggest takeaway that you really wanted children to leave after seeing this film?
Well, the biggest thing is kind of what I was stating before, which, I don't go in knowing what the theme is, but I can always sense there's something there, and I kind of figure it out as I'm going along. And what I finally figured out with Dory is it's about embracing what's unique about you, and it's kind of how I tried to what I kind of realized with my own kids was, because I have adults now, and I realized at some point, they're kind of wired the way that they were wired. This one came out hot and temperamental, and this one came out shy and kind of skittish, and that doesn't really change. All you can do is make them kind of own that they're wired that way, and kind of embrace it, and sometimes lead with that, and learn how to deal with it, and not try to hide it away and I felt like that was what Dory represented with her short-term memory loss. So it's really about turning what's quirky about you from what you may see as a weakness to a strength.
And I think that, I mean, obviously there's groundwork laid there in the first film, and I think a bit. And I think that, you know, with Nemo, and I think that in a weird way, even though that's not kind of how we went into it, over time it became something we really liked thematically because it worked for Dory as a character, is to kind of have everyone around her have something they're struggling with or some way that they define themselves that they think stops the conversation. I'm sorry, I suffer from short-term memory loss.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I'm sorry, I don't see very well. I can't swim very well because I don't see very well. And no, my echolocation doesn't work, and that kind of stops.
Right.
And I think I have 3 kids, and they do that all the time, right? Where they're like, I don't know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they stop.
Yeah.
And so what we love about Dory is that she doesn't ever, other than herself, spend any time acknowledging anybody else's. She never talks about Nemo's little fin ever in the movie. She never talks about, you know, she's like, I think you swim beautifully, and then moves on. She never talks about, she's like, oh, are you talking about echolocation? She's like, you go, ooh, and you see things? Is that what you mean? It's like the most, and that ultimately that ends up paying off for him. And I think
she doesn't do it to herself.
She never does it to herself.
She says
and
sorry
so she's always like, I'm sorry, and that stops her. And so I think it was one of those things where you go, how do you take all the things that we all project onto Dory, because that is how she is with everyone, and how we all kind of, and it's been what's celebrated about her as a character, right, forever since when she was created, and kind of gift her that because she deserves it for herself.
Yeah.
And
Which
so
is
that
really
was
the core of what kept me up at night wanting to make another movie.
yeah.
One more question too. You know, my son saw the movie when he was 1, and now he's going to be seeing it as a teenager.
Right.
And the movie, what we saw, showed Dory growing up. Can you talk a little bit about your decision to keep them the same age as they were in Nemo?
Oh yeah. Well, I think the biggest reason was I didn't want to have to explain what they did for 13 years. And I did feel like also that it was you kind of wanted to deal freshly with this newfound family, and that she was still pretty much dealing with whatever I thought was the issue that she had as a character from the first movie. And also, I like to say that we try to make our movies for the grandkids, not the kids. Like we're in it for the long haul. We're in it for like after like the success is gone and the box office records. Nobody knows who made these things, and you're just going to find them on the shelf, because it's kind of how I discovered all the Disney movies. I discovered them out of order. I don't know the history of what came out. I mean, I do now because I'm a geek and I went to school, but when I was a kid, I didn't. And, you know, and some of the biggest bombs that and that were not popular, they were some of my favorite movies. And it was like unbiased that I got to find these things, and I wanted to know that what if you find Finding Dory first?
What if somebody watches that movie first,
Right.
10 years from now, and has no idea that Finding Nemo came first?
both
Because it's
movies
not a
at the same
2,
time,
it's like, you don't
you know?
know. And so what if they watch that one first?
Yeah.
It would be cool if it could work.
Yeah.
Meaning, okay, I watched this, and then you're like, oh, Finding Nemo's like the prequel that came in after, and you're like, no, but okay. Like, yeah, if that's how you want to look at it. I mean, I think so. I think it was important. I also feel like, you know, there was an immediacy to your concern for Dory.
Yeah.
I think when you started to have that concern, that wasn't about, you know, that felt as though, I don't know if it's been, you know, 13 years, maybe she's not with them anymore. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, I kind of want the audience to know that's an immediate concern.
Yeah.
That she has, meaning it's not something that came up 13 years later for her. That
Clearly,
what
they
if
would have had to have solved that problem by then.
clearly, you know, that you would in theory would have imagined that if it was eating at her, and if she finally found a safe place where she allowed herself to kind of maybe be open to some of these other memories, that's an immediate, that was going to be in the next 6 months, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why.
Besides Dory, what new character is your favorite?
Well, that's like asking who's your favorite kid.
You
but
have
there
that.
are days when
yeah.
I have favorite
Yeah,
kids.
you're like that said. I can.
But I think it's a little bit of a pecking order simply because we spend a lot of time with Hank and Dory, and you just learn to really, like, he's like your grumpy uncle, and with a heart of gold. And so I think we've really grown to like him a lot. Right behind that is Bailey and Dory. I mean, Bailey and Destiny, just because they're so fun together, and I think we get just enough of a taste of them that you want a little bit more by the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. And then there's some others that I can't
That we
say.
haven't introduced you to yet. Yeah.
So we're gonna want more of a taste of Bailey and Destiny.
Yep.
They're gonna be a Finding Bailey. Are you gonna?
You know,
Is this
see,
gonna
I've-
eat at you for another?
I
couple of
know.
years?
I've learned now not to say never. But who knows? Who knows? I really do believe we've wrapped up everybody that had issues from the first movie.
But you created
But I
new ones.
can't
We created new issues. Yeah.
Yeah.
We never really explain why Hank only has 7
I don't know.
tentacles.
You know.
So how many boxes of tissues are we going to need to bring
I
to
was
this?
gonna ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I needed one for like 13 minutes last night. I was like, are
Yeah.
you kidding me?
You know, actually,
Just keep it with
I
you.
actually
Just keep
kinda
it with
get
you.
giddy hearing that.
Yeah.
I mean, I love a good. I
You
love a
didn't
good
hear all
cry.
the sniffles
Yeah.
in the
I love a
theater?
good cry. But honestly, people forget how dark and truthful and serious that the first movie kind of is, and you laugh not as often as you think, but you laugh very deeply because you're so invested.
Yeah.
In the first movie, and what you walk away so happy and fulfilled. You think that's what the whole movie feels like, and you forget how the beginning of it starts. And we kind of forgot too until we kind of came up with
Yeah.
this stuff, and then we realized. But it felt so correct when we fixed it, because it kind of puts you in the same space of like, no, you got to take these people fish seriously. You got to take this world seriously, and they're going through a lot, just like people and.
I think it's a different kind of sadness too. I mean,
It's not as traumatic.
It's like
you
it's
know.
because I think she's okay.
Yeah.
So when you watch it,
Even though you
it's
see this-
more about somebody hearing a sad story or seeing something sad about
But
somebody
they're here
you
telling
love.
it to you now.
They're here
right?
telling it to you,
Yeah.
and it's like, because it's not like, oh my God, is she not going to be okay? You're like,
Yeah.
no, she's going to be fine. I mean, I know she is. I've watched the whole movie with her, and and so it's more. And it was funny. My husband watched a scene that we didn't show you guys, and he was watching it for the first time, and he said, actually, in a weird way, it made him more willing to be sad in the moment, because he wasn't protecting himself from like
Is it gonna get worse?
he wasn't bracing himself
Like,
for
you
like,
know.
is it going to get worse and
Yeah.
is it not going to be okay?
But
And
it's
he's
intense.
like, he kind
it's,
of allowed himself to be like, this is really sad, and I'm watching it, but I know she's fine, and I'm okay, and I'm watching it,
I mean,
so
we don't pull back on the complexity of reunions,
yeah,
So Dory's okay.
Dory's okay.
She's okay.
She's okay.
So you said your kids are adults now. When
Yeah.
the first one came out, how they were younger.
My son was born when I started on Toy Story, and my daughter was born when we finished Toy Story.
So did they give you any input on what they wanted the story to be?
No, I don't let them know anything I'm working on.
No.
No. They kind of don't want to know either. They like the surprise.
So how does that feel for you as a parent, to have them come back to reconnect to a character that they had when they were little, that you created?
It's strange. I don't let them in on it so much, but then I forget that they've watched the movies just like all the other kids
Right.
their age. I think the biggest thing that ever hit me was I showed the trailer to Toy Story 3 to my son, and because I wrote the treatment for that, and we've kind of stayed along the actual calendar with their kids with that. And so, like I said, Ben was born right at the beginning of Toy Story, so he was basically 4, which is about a year younger than Andy, and when the Toy Story came out, so he's tracked along with Andy. And so when I wrote the idea for Toy Story 3, it's like, let's just embrace the fact that they're leaving, they're going to college. My son was about to go by the end of that movie, and when I showed him the trailer, he was 1 year from graduating, and I remember him watching, he turned to me and he goes, "This is my movie." This is my movie. And I kind of went,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, this means every kid is
gonna feel that way.
Oh my gosh!" And it just kind of really
Yeah.
hit me,
But you were saying that we were watching scoring session for this film, and Thomas Newman's score is so tremendous, and I think he intentionally did this. But we just done a chunk of the film a few weeks ago, and the last cue at the end of 2 days of scoring, right? You have a full orchestra on stage, and it's amazing, because you feel like you're watching the movie for the first time, kind of complete, like when the music gets put in, and it's emotional. I mean, because we have always kind of been seeing it in pieces, and you don't ever really get to have any distance from it until then. And so you're not really responsible for any of it. I mean, Tom's working his ass off, and we kind of get to sit there and listen to the beautiful music in some ways. So, and he saved it to be the last cue, and there's one cue in the film that's a really emotional moment in the film, and it's the cue from Nemo.
It's the only time we use it.
The only time we use it, and they were re-performing it, and he cleared the stage, and it was one solo oboist playing that. It's that very like knowable, and we all we just all of us were just kind of sitting there, and you said you had this moment of
It
like.
hit me. I mean, it's funny. I've gotten so used to that. The minute the movie came out, the first one, it's like your kid went into the world. Like it just became the world's, and so to me, it's just this movie like everybody else, like looking at it. And it took for that moment, and that was only about 2 months ago.
Not even.
That I could even remember, like suddenly remember what it was like to be alone in my office, going, what if it was this fish? And it was this fish that lost his son, and there'd be this fish that fell, and suddenly it was like I remembered the private. Nobody was with me. It was just myself coming up with the genesis of this thing.
It was
and
like
I just
watching
got
your
profoundly hit with just like how huge it had become. I'd like kind of never accepted that until that moment. It was pretty wild.
Yeah.
And then it was too big. I had to like move on.
Yeah, you're like-
Being overclipped. You
But
know?
it was like remembering the day your kid was born.
Yeah,
You know, and being like
basically.
this did not exist before this day.
Yeah.
This person did not exist
It's like,
before
look
this day.
Look what it did.
And look what it's
Yeah,
done. You know?
yeah.
So it's been pretty profound in that way.
So how does it feel to actually be part of all, like, because you said you make it for grandchildren. My daughter saw, Nemo was like the first movie she saw, and she's only 8, so she started 3 or whatever. You're part of so many generations now of memories of Disney and film. Like, how does that just feel?
You don't think about it. I mean, although it's kind of like I have no choice now. We're starting to hire people that grew up with their first movie being Toy Story.
So you feel old, is what you're saying. Yeah.
So I can't say I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. No, I mean, and pretty soon you're gonna have grandchildren of your own that are gonna be like, Grandpa,
I should be appreciating it, but it's just like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In one of the previous presentations that we were at, we kind of touched very lightly on Easter eggs.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There are
They're
plenty.
in there.
There are plenty.
Can you?
Well, there's the 4 that we always do, right?
Yeah,
Which is
there's-
A113,
right.
the
Pizza Planet.
Pizza
Pizza
Planet, some character from the next movie we're doing, and then John Ratzenberger.
Yeah.
Right? So those are
All
all
there.
definitely in there. But there's plenty more, and I don't know, some of them are so obscure and geeky, they would probably go over most people's heads, but
Which one's the next movie?
What's that?
the movie that's coming
Really?
out after
Is it
us
Coco?
is...
No, it's Cars.
Cars.
Oh.
Cars
Yeah.
3.
Yeah, Cars 3 is coming out next. So keep an eye out. There's something in there for that.
Yeah.
We always have to kind of do the next film.
But I'm
Make-
not going to give you a cheat sheet.
Yeah, we're not telling.
We already saw one.
We're not
Like,
telling.
they
Did
showed-
you?
Yeah, it's starless photos.
Yeah.
on the
Oh,
wall.
you did see
so
one.
I
You're
did
good.
see it.
There's
Yeah.
another one in that same shot.
Okay,
there
thank
is?
Yeah, that's it. Stop talking.
Oh, is
Yeah,
it that
she's-
same shot? It might be a later shot, but in that same
It's same
scene.
sequence.
Oh.
Yeah, same scene.
Ladies, we need to start wrapping this up. Do you guys have a last question? Oh, come on.
Sounds like your voice is getting better.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could do Crush, but I can't.
Yeah, I can't do
I
it.
sound like Crush right now, just talking.
You do.
It just doesn't. You may have said it already,
Okay.
so I apologize.
Sure.
But what did you enjoy most out of working on?
It's a tough one, but honestly, and it sounds a little cliche, but it's true. It's like it's too long. It's almost too long to like be in it for the play that you're going to put on at the end, because it's 4 years out. It's almost for the experience of just working with everybody that you do every day, because that's really where all your time is spent, and it's just the thrill of problem solving and creating with a great group of people, you know.
Yeah.
And we'd be lying if we said the days are fun. Sometimes they are, but there's a satisfaction for the challenges that you're facing together and that you've conquered them.
And there's just you never question anybody's motivation for coming to work every day,
Yeah.
which is that like they are in it to like make the best, as hard as it is.
I mean, 4 years, lives have ups and downs, and people have your back. There's been some tough times for some people on the show.
Yeah.
It's been really great to just kind of go through it with it and just know that those people are there, or that you were there for them, and
Yep.
it's a bit of a mini lifetime. It's going to college. It's going to college on these films.
Yeah.
So, just the experience, I guess.
Thank you.